Evening and welcome to James just disappeared. What happened to James?
Lord knows.
Evening, another episode of the Jungle Gyms podcast. Today is Tuesday, the 3rd of March, and we've got myself and McGinty, and James just departed us. I hope he's well. Hopefully he can reconnect again. McGinty, really good to see you. So obviously the weekend, Celtic had a massive game against Rangers in the Glasgow Derby. We had 7,000 in Ibrox, and that was pleasing to see. I think we're going to get even more next weekend. But we went through hell and back to get a 2-each draw. On the scale of things, it felt like a bigger point for us than what it did for Rangers. I think going into the game, a lot of Celtic fans were saying, as long as we can avoid defeat at Ibrox, then for our sins, we will still remain positive for the league campaign. So what was your overall takeaway from the game? And by the way, good to see you. I hope you're well. I like your top. Mexico 1999.
Yes, it is 99. I can never remember if it's 98 or 99, but yeah, 99. I thought I'd wear this one for two reasons. One, it's one of the few shirts that actually fits me just now. And secondly, obviously, our own Mexican hero of the last couple of weeks. He's becoming a bit of a fan favourite and a cult hero. So we kind of nodded the cap to him. Game-wise, Gavin, I will hold my hands up in a public forum. I've told you on the chats. I turned it off. At the first half, I was done, and I'm okay admitting that because there's multiple reasons why I did it. One is obviously there was a shocking performance in the first half, one of the worst performances I've seen from Celtic in a derby game in a long time. And the way the season's going for me, that was the season completely done at that point if we were getting beat. But I was also looking after my son who was not well, and it's one thing me torturing myself, but my wee boy was not well. I wasn't going to torture him either, so I put the cartoons back on for the wee man to try and cheer him up. At least one of us would have been happy in that sense. But the second half, I did, admittedly, some people will say glory hunting and all the rest of it. I have seen it. I have rewatched it since, so I've seen the whole game. It's a game of two halves in a lot of ways. But I'm not as much as the stats look great. Was it 17 shots we had compared to their 13 or 14, whatever it was? Possession in our favour over the game, bigger shots, bigger expected goals. All by the end of it, all the stats were well and truly in our favour. Arguably, we could have won that game in that sense. But watching it back, I still didn't feel like we were scintillating. I didn't feel like we were completely battering them down and blowing them away. What I did find was that we were a lot more calm, composed, controlled with the game. We seemed to understand the kind of back to basics that we needed to do to control the midfield, to be able to get the wide players involved a bit more. And I feel like if we just start games like that all the time and play consistently good throughout the games, we would win most games. We wouldn't be in this situation. But much like even under Nancy, it was a game of two halves. It was like night and day. Completely like, where the fuck did that come from?
It was the epitome of a game of two halves.
Yeah.
It was. Yeah, without exaggeration. And all more kind of frustrating because I was editing some of my notes for tonight, and the notes I was editing over was the Celtic and St Mirren game, the Celtic and Kilmarnock game, and it was like a carbon copy. Like Kilmarnock score 1, Kilmarnock score 2. Half time we make changes. Second half, Celtic score. There's just too much of that inconsistency. I think Neil Lennon probably summed it up well in his post-match comments whenever he said, it kind of just sums up Celtic season right now. They're capable of it, but they can't deliver over a full 90 minutes. And our goals conceded, I don't know if either of you have looked at it, but we're really racking up the goals in terms of the minus column here. But anyway, James, you actually did have the stomach for a title challenge. You did watch the full game. Sorry, McGinty. What was your overall takeaways for the game? And I guess if I could probably just move into the game itself, why don't we start off with your expectations first, and then we'll talk about the lineup.
Well, going into the game, I thought it was a must-win game, purely based off the Hibs result last week. The lineup, I think I've said it the last kind of couple of games. I'm inclined to pick holes in the lineup, especially with Adamu, questions over Dane Murray. But then the flip side of it is who's going to play in their place. I'm not convinced with Svan Chara. We don't know anything about Benjamin Arthur. The midfield, as we've said umpteen times, it tends to be Callum McGregor and another, and then obviously Negrin as well. So that's kind of names out of hat, really, or it was up until hopefully somebody stuck a claim on Sunday. So I would have probably went with a different team, but then the other side of it is I'm not also convinced that my changes would have remotely made any difference because I'm bringing in players that are unknown quantities or I'm not convinced by. But in terms of the game itself, I thought I think we need to start a wee kitty for every time somebody says a game of two halves tonight. But as you say, that was the kind of epitome of it. I must admit, I did kind of feel the worst going into it because I just don't trust the players. I just don't think the squad's good enough. And just like we were saying there, it's getting to kind of, you're counting down how many games are left, and we're still really looking to kickstart our season and go on a run. Hopefully, that second half performance will be it. But I must admit, I'm still of the opinion it was a must-win game. I get, obviously, in the context of the game and how it played out, it's a fantastic point, and I'm not denying that at all. But in terms of numbers, we've taken 1 point across the last two games, while Hearts have kind of stretched that advantage. So a lot of football still to be played, and there is definitely kind of positives, obviously, to take for the second half. But I feel as if it was 2 points trapped, to be honest.
Okay. Well, one of the kind of curiosities about the lineup was the fact that Kasper was dropped, but maybe not for the reason that we expected. We thought it was just going to be a plain form issue and injury issue. I don't know if Martin O'Neill had expanded on it anymore, but I've just heard that he said it was down to illness, and that he said that Kasper should be back and go for the next game. So Sinisalo obviously came in, and he did concede 2 goals, but I wouldn't point the blame at him for either of those 2 goals. McGinty, I think you've been kind of up and down with Sinisalo. I think you had high hopes for him. You wanted to believe in the theory that he would be the guy to replace the number 1. The kind of the younger guy replacing the older guy. He's had a couple of games here and there during the season where he's not really lived up to expectations. I'm thinking primarily the one against that junior team, Auchinleck Talbot. But what was your thoughts on Sinisalo for this game? Did he give you more confidence?
I think he's been a lot better the last 2 games. Was it Falkirk he played against as well, along with Talbot during the Nancy era? I think he played a couple of games, and I think without trying to be too nice to some of the players, a lot of them do need to buck up over the course of the season. They've been pretty shambolic, but I think you can almost completely forgive the entire defensive setup under Nancy because not one person was helped. Thrusty comes out with flying colours purely because he was the only actual defender who was visibly defending at times, but as a whole, as a defensive nightmare under Nancy. So I wouldn't want to lay into him too harshly for those games, but it didn't do us or him any confidence or any help. But the last couple of games, he stepped up and he's looked a bit more like what we saw last season when he had that little run when Kasper, I think, had a shoulder injury when he was playing for Denmark. And it looked a bit more assured. I think he commands his box a little bit better. His distribution's a little bit better without being fantastic. And I'd actually, it's not going to happen. You know, when the number one comes back anyway, but I'd actually be quite happy and content to see him get the run of games through now to at least the split, if not the rest of the season, because Casper, for whatever his reasons are, injury, form, weight, mentality, whatever you want to chalk it all down to, this season he has been quite poor and he's shipped a lot of goals, and he's not just to blame. Sorry, his excuse is not just on the Nancy era. He's been this way all season, and I think it's quite harsh to see somebody like Sinisalo come in, do reasonably well without blowing the doors off the hinges coming into the game, into the squad. But he's done reasonably well, whereas we know Casper's literally chucking in goals every game.
Yeah, I think in his fair, you could probably say that he didn't look nervous during the game, despite the magnitude of what was at stake. James, another thing that I want to kind of pick a hole in for the lineup. So obviously Junior Adamu, who started as the centre forward, and Chvanchara, who has had more starts, more game time than Adamu. Chvanchara was on the bench. In fact, he didn't even get on at all. What did you think the kind of thinking for Martin O'Neill was behind that kind of switch up for the centre forward position?
I've no idea. I don't know if I'm maybe in the minority, but based off what we've seen, the strikers available at the club, I think our best striker is Iheanacho, and he's not getting a look in at all. He's not getting a sniff domestically. Just gets a game in Europe, and that was it. So look, I actually feel a wee bit sorry for Adamu, because it's a Jekyll and Hyde Celtic all season. Like, you've seen, he comes on against was it Dundee, wasn't it? And he scores the last kick of the ball to take it to extra time, which was the only touch basically he had, I think, in the time that it was on the park. Which, if you're going to score with it, that's perfect as a striker. He then comes on at Kilmarnock, and the Kilmarnock game at Rugby Park was oddly similar to the game at Ibrox in the terms of, obviously, we're 2-0 down at half time, but just in the way the game went as well. Our whole thing seems to be get the ball to a fullback and then just launch it, whether it's out wide, whether it's down the striker's throat. And I don't even think, I mean, we get told that Chvanchara wasn't a target man, so I don't get why we're playing like that. And because we're playing like that and we don't have the players, the ball's bypassing the midfield and you're feeding off scraps at best. So I think it's very hard to judge him. I think he looked alright against Stuttgart on Thursday night. I think without being brilliant, he does well for the goal. And I think he looked alright. So I was fine with him actually keeping his position, because, as I say, I don't think that Iheanacho is really in Martin O'Neill's plans, and I'm remain to be convinced with Chvanchara. So I was fine with him starting, but again, I came away from that game and I don't know what Adamu is. I don't know what kind of striker he is, because he just was not involved in the play, and it was through really no fault of his own. It was just the tactics that we'd set out to play in that first half, but we're just sharing it forward to him, and clearly that's not his game. I don't think it's ending in the squad's game. So I'd like to see a second half performance with Adamu up front, just to see if he can do the damage for us. But I think it's very, very harsh and hard to judge him on what we've seen him, because we haven't seen a lot and he's not been involved, but pretty much by design, I think.
Mm-hmm. Well, heavy vibes here in the comments. It said that Iheanacho, as he calls himself, Itchy Arsehole, is our best striker, but he only gets paid if he plays or on the bench. And apparently he got that from Axom today. So I don't know if there's truth to that. I don't know if I've not watched the Celtic pods today. That would certainly be a worrying thing if you don't play a player out of a financial incentive for him to get money. That's not a healthy thing to do. You should obviously play to your strengths, but in my opinion, from what I surmise, Iheanacho's fitness is up and down. Probably one of the reasons why Sevilla let him go and why we managed to get him on a free. I don't know. I think the guy's still in his 20s, but yeah, I think with the ball at his feet, with his football IQ, and his calmness in front of goal, he probably would be the preferred striker. But he's massively unreliable in terms of being able to command a starting place, much less a a berth in the squad overall. Japan Chara, well, we've seen a bit of good, but a bad from him, you know. And Adamu, again, that's the second time he's been hooked at half time, as you said, against Kilmarnock at Rugby Park. He get hooked at half time when we were 2-0 down, and if we're not playing to his strengths, I thought that he might have been starting because he wanted to pressurise the Rangers centre halves with the ball. He was able to run in behind, but again, we never even came close to kind of threatening to do that. So just another thing, obviously, we changed it. We tried to put it right. Going into the game, Rangers scored, if we do admit it, a very good goal. 7 minutes, Chermiti scored an overhead kick. I think in the build-up to the goal, Cam Gregor passed it to Araujo. Whenever he was already in kind of the full-back position, he was trying to help out defensively. Maybe the best option in hindsight would have been to kick it out, even if he wasn't able to spin around and lob it up the park. But no, he passed it to Araujo, and Araujo had the ball nicked away from him, and then it kind of led to a cross on the other side of the park. So I don't think anybody can really quibble with that. I think the closest player to Chermiti whenever he did score was Araujo, and Araujo is not a midget, but Chermiti is just such a bigger, more powerful guy, and Sinisalo really never had a chance for that. I'm really happy the fact that Rangers never won this game, because that goal would have been immortalised. They would have looked back on it and seen it's one of the best goals ever. But it's remarkable how a result can diminish one moment. Do you remember that McGeady spin at Ibrox back in 20 odd years ago? We must be going back. He had two defenders against him. He did this massive spin, or a typical spin, and he evaded the two defenders, and he managed to kind of cross it in. And it was just a beautiful piece of skill that people stood up and applauded. But we lost that game, so we never really talk about it. I guess that's the point that I'm driving at. McGinty, overhead kick.
Overrated. Nah, you do hold your hands up. It obviously was a well-taken shot. The goalkeeper's got not much choice and not much chance to save it. It's hard to lay blame on that goal. You kind of just have to accept it at times. The second goal is diabolical, though. I'm sure we'll get on to. But yeah, sometimes you just need to hold your hands up to a good bit of play and a good goal.
Aye. Well, the guy gets his second brace against Celtic this season, which is quite embarrassing for a player who was getting vilified by his own fans. This was on about 25 minutes. It was a kind of a lazy ball from that wee Amish-looking guy, Raskin. And the ball comes to Murray. It should be a bread and butter clearance for him, but it was like the bounce almost baffled him, and he had a fresh swipe at it. And then it bounces to Araujo and Chermiti. Araujo, maybe he could have stretched and headed that away. So I think that was his first opportunity to clear his lines. He misses that, and then the ball bounces, and then at that point he could have tried and hit it again, but Chermiti was too fast for him. Chermiti went on one side of him, knocked it on the other side, and then collected the ball. And before Sinisalo really had any time to steady himself, Chermiti actually, with a good finish, the outside of his boot, he put it past Sinisalo. So that's 25 minutes in, and we're 2 goals down, and our defence looked foolish in that point. James, I'd imagine at that point you were thinking, what you doing, Murray?
What you doing, Murray? Aye, living up to the name. But look, he's got that in them, and we know that, and that's why I know we don't know anything about Arthur, but largely with Dane Murray, he puts in he costs us a goal every game, more or less. I think he was in there after the back his performance on Thursday when there wasn't really any pressure on it in terms of the result. I personally would have liked to have seen Arthur get the nod. I'd like to see Arthur get the nod the Mora night as well. I know there'll be people that say like he came back and he done really well in the second half. He won X amount of headers, but the guy's costing us a goal more or less every game that he's playing, pretty much. And it's just we can't keep doing it, but we do keep doing it. So I I'd like to see Arthur getting an odd moving forward, but in terms of the goal itself, it's just a big fresh air swipe, and he's done it in the past as well. It's horrendous. Actually, I think it's a wee bit awkward for Araujo because the ball's so close to him, and it's at a kind of difficult height. He can't like launch it clear, and he can't really kind of take a touch to control it or anything. It's kind of bouncing at like knee height, I'm sure. But it should have been cleared in the first instance with Murray. It was there just to be blootered up the park, and he just totally fluffs his lines. It's a big freshie, and obviously they go 2-0 up. And at that point, I'm jumping behind the couch thinking this could be anything here.
I guess we will talk about Dane Murray at the end of the game and talk about a few individuals, definitely. So there was one other chance for Rangers right at the end of that first half. 47 minutes, across to the back post. In fact, it's easy to actually forget this one. It was across to the back post, and the fullback Romans kind of goes in unmarked, and he has a weak effort, which is gathered up by Sinisalo. But if he had a bit of composure, if it wasn't a fullback, if it was a midfielder or a striker who came in at that position, he put it away. For me, the game is dead and buried. 3-0 at Ibrox at that point. There was no way coming back. And I didn't realise it, but that was a blessing in disguise. At that point, it looked like 2-0 going on 6-0. I think we were all fearing the worst. I don't think you can overstate how bad Celtic were. Like, from 50-50s, not winning them, to you were just thinking, what is our gameplay here? What is our tactics? What's the strategy here? Players might be able to find a ball to someone, but somebody passes it to Maida, and Maida, rather than collecting the ball and then giving it off to the fullback, he just tries to hit it first time and loses the ball. People were losing individual battles, like people at Tierney. You could see Tierney was getting frustrated. He was grabbing people's shots, causing fouls in positions where it looked like he had possession. He was just allowing players to win the ball off him. And it wasn't just Tierney, it was almost everybody. Everybody was having pretty much a shocker. And at that point, at half-time, I was almost writing about a obituary, and it was like, this is the end of a kind of an era almost. It looked like players who we've relied on, they've went to the well and back for us year in, year out. It looked like they were just running on empty. It's almost like they just had not been given the support. And then at that point, you're getting furious with the board. You're pleading for the management to be more motivational. What happened to like the tactics that Maloney and Fotheringham were teaching them at Lennoxtown? Why wasn't that evident in the first half? It looked fucking dire, so dire. But half-time made a couple of changes. So James, at half-time, who did we change? So Oxley Chamberlain came off, and Adamu who came off. I guess Tenetke, he came on, Hatate came on. Just about Oxley Chamberlain, I don't think is he living off that moment against Livingston? I don't know, but the game, he looked like he was plodding in that game, caught unawares, physically not at the races. I'm not writing him off, but it's a difficult environment, but he wasn't pulling his weight and had to go. Are you more worried about Oxley Chamberlain, about what impact he could actually bring us between now and the end of the season? Or am I being harsh?
Not me. I don't know if I'm going to be harsher still then, because I've never really bought into the hype surrounding him about everybody saying he was this great signing, but it was always caveated with if he can get fit.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just thinking, well, if he can get fit, he wouldn't be signing for Celtic on a free off the back of a fairly mediocre spell in Turkey. And that's not me assigning him to scrap heap early doors, but that's the reality of the situation. If he could stay fit and he was shown any kind of form previously, he wouldn't be signing for us on a free. And that's not even to say, I think we are kind of handicapping him, because I don't think he's a kind of sitting midfielder playing that deep role. I think he'd be more suited to the number 10. Maybe once upon a time he was that kind of combative midfielder that would have put his about and kind of box to box type, but evidently he doesn't have the legs for that, or he doesn't have the fitness for that currently. So I wasn't surprised to see the game kind of pass him by. But again, as I say, that first half, our tactics were essentially to bypass the midfield anyway. It just felt as if it was either Tierney or Araujo, and then it was getting scudded up the park to somebody, and then we were feeding up, well, trying to feed off second balls that wasn't happening. But he had overall, he's had a few kind of tidy moments. Rugby Park again was kind of similar, where he was, you could see him actually trying to take the game by the scruff of the neck, but there was still a couple of moments where he gave the ball away. I can think of one where he stayed down after it, kind of injured, and Kilmarnock ran up the park. But it was similar at Ibrox and Sunday as well. So look, the jury's very much still out on him, but I think that was always going to be that way anyway. Because it is going to be a case of we're going to need to drip feed him game time. Maybe for the time being, he's better being an impact player off the bench, but I think we need to play him in that number 10 role. But the flip side of that is you need to then take Negrin out of the team, who, for as shite as he might look during games and non-existent as he might look during games, he's the only one that's consistently putting the ball in the back of the net. So I wouldn't be in a rush to take him out either.
Right. McGinty, this was obviously a massive game. That goes without saying. In our engine room, we've got two central midfielders who are in their 30s, McGregor and Oxlade-Chamberlain. Now that in itself isn't a red flag, because I remember a few years ago we went to Ibrox with Neil Lennon and Roy Keane, and they acquitted themselves very, very well. They didn't get overrun, despite the fact maybe a lack of athleticism with their experience and their physicality and their coolness. They managed to acquit themselves very, very well. But admittedly, a bit of a difference in quality between Roy Keane and Neil Lennon compared to Callum McGregor and Oxlade-Chamberlain. Albeit our captain, I don't want to do the guy a disservice, and Oxlade-Chamberlain has had a fantastic career whenever he has been fit. But it just goes to show that these are our best options. You need to win the midfield battle. As James said, there was an over-reliance in giving the ball to our fullbacks. It seems like our most gifted players right now are our fullbacks. But there's only so much that they can do, because they are indeed defenders. So yeah, my point, I guess, the engine room, and you've got two 30-year-olds. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, you got two 30 and the 30-year-old midfielders trying to be your engine room. You're comparing them, I know not exactly, but you're comparing them to Lennon and Keane, when traditionally both of them are attacking players. Obviously, McGregor's more known as not quite a number 10, but more known for his attacking playmaking kind of style. And we all know Oxlade-Chamberlain started his career as a winger and wanted to attack the ball more. So you've got those two kind of guys, and you're asking them to play more like your Wanyamas, Lennon, Keane, your Lamberts, whatever. They're just no set up for that. They're no kitted out for that. And Oxlade-Chamberlain, I think it's probably right what the guys are saying in the chat, and what James said as well. He's an impact sub, and that's no slight on him. His age, his fitness, his last couple of years, it's just the player that he is now. He's no... If you're expecting Oxlade-Chamberlain to come up here and be the EPL superstar that's going to come in and win us the league, play 90 minutes a game twice a week, then as James says, he wouldn't be fucking signing for us if he was at that level still, ready to play.
Tell you what, Aaron fucking Moy. Aaron Moy would have been comfortable in that game.
Aaron Moy would have been, but Aaron Moy is a different level of player in many different ways to what Oxlade-Chamberlain is. Oxlade-Chamberlain comes to Celtic with all the hype in the world of being a fucking EPL player all his life. Aaron Moy comes back to Scottish football as Aaron Moy. He's no been at the same level as Oxlade-Chamberlain in that sense, height-wise at least anyway. So it's different. I mean, even Aaron Moy traditionally was that kind of player. We did use him more sparingly. He was more impactful as a sub, or used to give players a rest and he'd get 60 minutes, stuff like that. I don't think he played many full games, did he? But yeah, same issues in our midfield in that engine room that's been there for years, Gavin, that me and James have said so many times. And Adding Oxley Chamberlain, in hindsight, hasn't changed that one iota. He's just another midfielder that we're no playing in the best position because we're too busy trying to fucking shoehorn people into some sort of position, namely Callum McGregor, into a defensive midfield player when he's not.
Yeah. Right, well, going into the second half, before James tries to get a rebuttal in about that.
No comment.
Right, Rio Hatate comes on, and Hatate is showing for the ball. Now, admittedly, Rangers look as if they've kind of went back. They're sitting a little bit deeper. They're not being aggressive in their press. But what I like about Hatate is that in this game anyway, he is running about the park, up and down, box to box, and he's making like the defenders are passing out to him, and he is like running to the ball with his back to the opposition, his back to the Rangers goal, and he's just making one-touch passes, spraying it out to a fullback, spraying it out to maybe a winger, to another midfielder. He's not doing what Callum McGregor would do. He would take a touch, turn around, and then maybe like take a few steps and then pass it out to someone else. Hatate has been far more assertive, and he's just spraying the ball around. It just looked like at that point he was comfortable. It looked like there was almost like the pressure was off Hatate. Nobody's expecting him to do anything. We're already 2-0 down. Nobody's really stepping up to the mark. But he just comes on, and it looks like he's having fun, like he's really enjoying himself. And, that eventually leads to a goal in the 56th minute. Hatate, really smart pass to Callum McGregor, who's just inside the Rangers box. He lays it off to Nygren. Nygren takes a touch, a deft little dink to Tierney, who's in between two central defenders, well, a defender and Raskin, and he out jumps the two defenders, perfectly placed, and he heads it down into the ground, and the bounce evades Butland. Great goal, really, really well worked goal, and I think it wouldn't have came across if it didn't happen from Hatate having that vision to pick up McGregor and just that sharpness of passing. Great goal, and at that point you're thinking game on. There's plenty of time in the game, and Rangers do look evidently like that they've kind of gassed a wee bit, and Celtic are they're getting on the ball, making things happen. At that point, James, was your optimism up?
I don't know if I'd go that far, but I sat up in my chair. I was sitting on the edge of my seat as opposed to behind it. But no, like you say, I must admit though, when I seen Hatate coming on for the second half, I was like, oh no, here we go. Because that is what we've seen of Hatate. That was comfortably his best performance in probably over a year. Aye. He was really, really good. And like you say,
he's been good away in Europe, away in the Netherlands against Feyenoord, yeah. But I digress. Sorry, mate.
But no, what I was going to say is, like you actually kind of stole my thunder when you were saying about his back to goal. That's something that I've found, more or less under Martin O'Neill, is that a lot of your players, when they're receiving the ball, it's with their back to goal. There's no a lot of kind of running in behind. It's either try to play it up, as I say, label the point, but launching it up the line for the full back, or when we do play through the middle, it's almost as if every single pass the receiver has to have his back to goal. So as I say, when I seen Hatate coming on, I wasn't impressed. I was just thinking it'd be maybe the same, kind of phoning it in as we've seen this season, but he was really, really good, and he showed that composure to take a touch, just one touch as opposed to taking too many touches, and he was very comfortable when he was receiving the ball with his back to goal, and I think it kind of helped McGregor out as well, because I slaughtered McGregor at half time, and I've probably defended McGregor arguably more than I should have, because I still don't think he's that kind of central defensive midfielder. He never has been, but that also doesn't mean that every time you get the ball you need to run forward and then pass it after the side or pass it backwards. And I don't think it's by coincidence, because just to digress on to McGregor, we've seen it at Rugby Park as well. In the second half, he took the game by the scruff of the neck and he dragged us up the park, and he was helped out with Hoven on that day, Oxley Chamberlain beside him, and then similar, I think Hatate had the same impact on McGregor. at Ibrox, where it frees him up to play forward. He doesn't need to be the only one sitting there with the kind of responsibility of the defence. Honestly, it was like watching two different teams. It was night and day at first half to the second half, and like you say as well, we could have been 3-0 down inside a couple of minutes, and that really would have been curtains. But Hatate was brilliant, and as it's been more or less since Engels got injured, you could even argue when he was fit, but it tends to be McGregor, Negrin, and somebody else. And I just hope that that's Hatate now back on form. I know we're putting a lot of kind of pressure on him for 45 minutes worth of football, but hopefully that's him back and it's his jersey to keep now, and then we can kick on again.
And good comment here from Smell the Glove. Obviously, not getting carried away with the emotion of people making a difference, and he's saying that we should be using these players as impact subs, such as Hatate, Tineke, McCowan, and Oxlade Chamberlain, because it's so easy to fall into the trap of whenever a player comes on as a sub, it makes an impact, and we're thinking he should have been starting from the beginning. It's just so reactionary to do that. The player out of those four that I would say especially as an impact sub is Tineke, and moving on to Tineke just now, in fact. So before we actually scored the equalising goal in the 78th minute, Tineke made a great piece of play. It was one of the best sequences of play in the game for Celtic. He managed to evade his marker on the left flank, and he drifted into the midfield. He made a really smart 1-2 with Nygren, and he slid the ball through to McCowan. Now, you could argue that the ball was maybe weighted a little bit too heavy whenever McCowan received it, because, well, that was that, in my opinion. Maybe a slightly weighted too heavy. McCowan probably makes the situation worse because he's determined to bring the ball back onto his left foot. And at that point, whenever he shapes to go for the shot, he completely telegraphs it. Now, if you had Nygren in that position, I think he would have that deftness, that poise, and he would probably lift it into the roof of the net. But McCowan, he just didn't have that ability, didn't have that awareness at that moment in time. Everybody in the stadium could see what he was going to do once he shifted onto his left. Now, perhaps in hindsight, you could say drill it with your right foot as soon as the ball comes across your pathway. But for one reason or another, that just didn't happen. So really, really disappointing. But it was another bit of evidence of the attacking play that the Celtic were doing and the impact that Tineke was having. Tineke is a brilliant ball carrier. However, the goal itself, we'll get to that, McGinty. So the penalty would probably be a miss of us not to say how the chance was created, and it was James Forrest on the right. Now, I've been critical of James Forrest when he's came on as a sub this season. I feel that he's been struggling to make that yard to create the cross. He managed to do it this time. Created the yard down the right flank. Really good cross. And Maida, perfect ball right on the button. And as we know, you've got Dijon Sterling, who does a starfish jump with his legs up in the air, hands up in the air, ball hits off his arm, and then it looks as if Butland has pulled off a great save. The ball goes out for a throw-in, and then we're determined just to get back and take the throw-in. Thank fuck VAR stopped us from doing that. Thank God for that. Now, obviously, Butland, Beaton never saw it. I never saw it. I'd be surprised if anybody saw it in real time. Maida never saw it, and he was inches away from the incident. But VAR had the presence of mind to stop the play and look back at it. So tell me, that happened. That incident happened on the 86th minute, and we scored a penalty on the 91st minute. So there was quite a bit of play, quite a bit of time in between for Beaton to look at it, and then decide, am I going to do this? Am I going to do this? Eventually, he called for the penalty at that point. What was your kind of recollection of the replays in that one? Was there any kind of thought, fear in your mind that Beaton might not give it?
See, because I've watched the game after the fact,
yeah,
it's hard to mentally get into that kind of way, because you're not watching it live, you know, seeing what's happening. But I can imagine myself I'm looking at the replays myself and thinking he's looking at this for a reason not to give it, rather than am I looking at this to see what's happened to justify giving it kind of the attitude of how the VAR and the refs go about it is always a wee bit different. It feels. I feel like he's probably looking at it to think, is it ball to hand? Is it too close a proximity sort of thing? Because they've used that one a few times, but as soon as you see from the angle that it's clearly going to go under Butland and it's going to go in the back of the net, you have to go a penalty. There's debates about, red cards and all the rest of it. See, if we're honest, at that time in the game, I don't think a red card would have made any fucking difference. The game's pretty much done at that point. You want the penalty, you just want to get on with it. The two things I would point out, one James is going to love me for, but the first one is, what the fuck was Sterling trying to do with that jump? Like, you jump and you lead with your head, surely, to try and get the head on the ball. Your head should be the furthest thing forward, yet he's jumping with a fucking kung fu kick, fucking legs stretched out, and people are trying to defend it, saying that it's, natural position for your arm. It's absolutely fucking not.
I think he was trying to do a Peter Schmeichel and make himself as big as possible.
Which is great if you're a goalkeeper.
Yeah.
But you're no. The other thing is, I didn't even realise it was that long. 5 minutes. Yet he only played up to 95 and 47 seconds was the blow of the whistle. Does that mean he's only going to play 47 seconds of injury time if it wasn't for the penalty incident? Where's the other 5 minutes? That should have been up to 9. And literally, that should be about 9 or 10 minutes had he done, surely. Which maybe the red card would have made a difference at that point. But yeah, it's a definite penalty. No ways about it. Why it took so long is a mystery to most, but it's really not a mystery. We all know why it took so long.
I was calling beating for everything up here because like you say, we took that throw in quickly and we were in doing the wing, and I'm calling him for everything for pulling it back for VAR, and then you see the replay, you're like, well, actually.
When you saw Hatate stand up for it, you think, oh, for fuck's sake. You just went, wait.
And quite a comical moment after the game when the Sky punditry team were talking about it. Ailey Barber was talking about Celtic shots on goal, and she said even Rio Hatate managed to get 3 shots on goal, which shows his impact, until someone pointed out that's because he needed 3 attempts to score from a penalty. James, you've probably seen it, maybe the people in the comments have seen it as well, the video of the Rangers fans whenever the penalty is saved, and there's 2 like Tweedledee and Tweedledum, 2 Rangers fans behind the goal whenever Butland saves it, and they're up Keenan Loudy, and then Hatate has the second attempt, Butland saves it again, and they're loving life until the moment is snatched away from them, and Bagson rushes in, but Hatate gets there first, scores. Quite a comical moment, and what was great was they pick up the ball and they're running back because they know that we are hunting for the third. We're looking for the killer goal now to put it to bed. It wasn't to be. And if you saw Hatate's reaction, it was just like a relief where he blows the air out of his cheeks, and he was like, "Thank fuck for that." He probably said that in Japanese. I know that we've been speaking about turning points, James. Turning points where we snatch a draw from the jaws of a defeat, or we snatch a victory from the jaws of a defeat. I'm not going to ask you that, but could this be a turning point for Rio Hatate?
Honestly, who knows? You'd like to think so, because he has been a million miles off it any time he's played, and I think we've all probably at some point or other. I remember saying it walking at Rugby Park a couple of weeks ago, was that has to be the last we see of Hatate. That's going to be him done. That'll be him done. He'll go away in the summer, and then obviously he comes on and he was brilliant on Sunday. So I don't know. It's just Hatate in a nutshell, to be honest with you. But in terms of turning points and kickstarting our season and all that, as I was saying before we come on, we're in March now. So Hatate's got, what is it, 9 games we've got left? Is it 9, 11, 9? Whatever it is. He's got 9 games to win our Player of the Season medal. And it is there for the taking somehow. So hopefully it is.
I don't know who would get it. Like,
it's got to be Negrin just purely for goals.
But he's like the top goal scorer yet, and no offense to him, one of the most unimpactful players in the whole midfield. It's like his impact is non-existent, yet he somehow scores the fucking goals.
Yeah, he's not interested in working for that midfield.
But
Right,
again,
so
Gavin, before you go, again, I'm labouring this point week after week. He doesn't work for the midfield because he's not that type of midfielder, and our midfield is not set up to allow him to be that kind of supporting striker. And I know we're not quite talking about this exactly, but if you're trying to think, right, who do you play from here on out? Yes, Nigren is one of the names that has to be on the team sheet. But you talked about people who are impact subs. I still think Tenetki is probably one who has to be on the team sheet at the starting 11. Not because he's that great, but because there's fucking nobody else. But you need to find that lineup that is going to be consistently giving you at least something and work the best way around it. And I think the best way to get something out of Nigren is probably playing him as a secondary striker / number 10 off the back of Dyson Maeda through the middle. And it's not anybody's greatest idea, but it might just be the only thing that actually sees us through, because we don't have any striker fucking capable of scoring goals. But we do have a midfielder who can actually support, and you can support somebody who can run like a fucking Duracell bunny, then you play Maeda at the same time.
Yeah. Aye. Good point. And if you heavy vibes here, you wanted Rio gone last season, but now we're pinning our hopes on him. And that's kind of where we're at right now, because we need the people who don't even look like they're going to perform. We need them to, turn over a new leaf. We need him firing on all cylinders. We need the old Maeda back. But, we're very much in the business end of the season right now. And Maeda isn't really showing that old player that we saw. He won the player of the year last season, and it's just a massive downturn. But we need to, if we are going to be optimistic about winning this league, then the evidence isn't there, but we need to be putting our faith in these players, because who's going to pull us through? Tenetku, who's an impact sub, Nygren, who might score a goal but doesn't work for the team. It's placing our hope in the fullbacks. People really need to come onto a game, and I don't know, it's a massive challenge. Dane Murray, what you ask you briefly about Dane Murray, we did mention him at goal that we conceded. For a lot of what the Huns did during that game, lofted balls, and Dane Murray won a lot of headers. He was quite aggressive in that, to his credit. In the second half, I can't remember him doing anything wrong. So I know that it's tough to give someone a pass whenever they do give away a goal. But we're in the trenches right now. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, we're going to miss Trusty for the Aberdeen game, and we're also going to miss him for the game at Parkhead against Motherwell, the Saturday the 14th. That'll be the third league game that he will have missed. So we're going to have to depend on Dane Murray again, unless you want to bring in the boy Arthur. But I don't know, how do you sum up Dane Murray, James?
What you Dane Murray? That is honestly how I'd sum him up, because as I say, he was good on Thursday night in Stuttgart, but circumstances are totally different, because the game was done really in the first leg. The tie was done. So in that regard, there isn't really any pressure on us. I get that you don't want to take a doing. Of course you don't. But maybe that kind of freedom let us play a wee bit more, and we were kind of. I know Stuttgart had the lion's share of the chances, but we were kind of structured. We done what we done in Bologna. We done what we done in Feyenoord, and we looked all right. But then you come into Sunday, and obviously it's just a totally different level in terms of pressure. And again, he cost us a goal, and he was good in the second half, and he won his fair share of headers. But you can't go into a game with a guy like, if Schmeichel chucked a goal in and then played well after it, we'd be slaughtering him. And I get that he's a young guy, and I get that he showed some positives in the second half. But I just think, I mean, we've seen it at Tynecastle. Cost us a goal, concedes a penalty as well. Who was the other game against as well? There was another game in the league. Was it Falkirk? There was another game domestically anyway. Aston Villa as well in the Champions League going back. He is literally more or less costing us a goal a game. So I don't know how good you can look when that is your record. And that's why, and maybe I'm being harsh, but I just think for a team that's absolutely leaking goals and struggling to find a goal scorer, playing a centre half that is costing you a goal a game on average probably isn't a wise move. So that's why I'd like to see Arthur come in. Arthur could come in and be hopeless, and Murray comes back in and takes his place deservedly. But I just don't see the point of the Arthur signing. It's very much in the Jemai Simpson-Pusey bracket. Just what are we doing? What's the thinking? Where's the logic? We needed a first team centre half to come in. And we're playing Dane Murray again. So maybe I'm being harsh on him, but that's just where I'm at with him.
I think under Gordon Strachan, or was it Neil Lennon Gordon Strachan, we brought in experienced centre halves who they could play in the first team or maybe come on from the bench. People like, Stephen Presley and Daniel Mostorovic. I would have preferred a defender of that calibre, of that profile, rather than somebody who's just started their football career. I would have preferred somebody with experience.
But that's the thing as well, though, and this isn't a slight on any of the players because it's not their fault. But this is where it comes down to the recruitment on the board again. In January, we would have, I think, everybody wanted a centre half to come in and take one of the two, Scales or Trusty, to take one of their positions, to walk in and be the number one pick for centre half. It didn't happen. And then we get to the point where Trusty's suspended, and our two options are a guy that's played a handful of games for Queen's Park, or a guy that hasn't played a senior league. Well, he played 5 minutes last week, but he's not played a senior league game in men's football. So it's just, is it a surprise that the drop-off is there when the recruitment is that poor or non-existent?
That wasn't the only option, though, James.
Stephen Welsh.
Stephen Welsh. And I'm not saying Stephen Welsh is fantastic, but the entire recruitment process surrounding a centre-back in that window was absolutely mental. Why you recall Stephen Welsh back on the principle of Pussy's shite, we need another centre-back, to only then go out and sign somebody with even less experience than Pussy in the first place, and then send Welsh back out. The exact scenario we were trying to cover our arse for was an injury or somebody like Trusty getting 3-game ban, because you don't want to go through that. So your only thing you did was bring in inexperienced players. Why not just keep Stephen Welsh for the rest of the season? Now, I know he wanted to go back to Motherwell, which you don't blame Stephen Welsh for, because his chances at Celtic are fucking non-existent anyway. And it's not to say that he's the answer to all our centre-back issues. But given the option of Dane Murray, Pusey, or Arthur, I'm picking Stephen Welsh all day fucking long. Yet we just send him back to Motherwell and replace. It was an absolute fucking bonkers situation to be in. And like yourself, Gavin, we should have been going out and getting a 32, 33-year-old. I know I came onto a podcast not long ago, and a few months back, and can't even fucking remember Marvin Comper playing for us at the best of time. But at least he was somebody who could come in and, all right, not below the world of me, but he could walk straight into a squad and go, right, I know what I'm doing here. I'm not going to be a bomb scare. I might not be great, but he's not going to ship you a goal every fucking game that he plays. No offence, Dane Murray. He needs game time. He needs experience. But Dane Murray should be out at Motherwell. No Stephen Welsh. And Stephen Welsh probably shouldn't be our number one centre-back either. But that's, again, the whole thing is just fucking upside down and backwards.
Yeah.
McGinty needs his crash helmet on again if he's pining for Marvin Comper back in the squad.
Absolutely not.
Dane Murray is obviously learning on the job. I see the one thing. I know that it's very, very easy to say we should have kept Stephen Welsh, and I think, in hindsight, we should have. like, what do we get out of him joining Motherwell? Like, they're going to pay his wages, a bit of his wages. We would have been better off keeping him. At the same time, though, it's easy to get carried away and looking at his form under this Motherwell manager and saying, wow, we could have had that at Celtic. But if we're being honest with ourselves, he has not shown an extended bit of good form for Celtic. He was always the unlucky guy. He'd get thrown into a game and then he would get injured. And it was like a different injury, one thing after another. He just had such a run of bad luck for Celtic that I almost felt like he was cursed and that he had to go out. And we're happy for him that he's having this good run of form.
Absolutely.
The Motherwell who are now breathing down our throats. But at no point in his Celtic career has he demonstrated that form in a hoop shirt. So at the same time, probably we can't have it both ways. But yeah.
Dave Murray is probably in the very similar situation in that sense that the only time he comes in is when we're struggling for players and he's a body to fill a space.
Yeah.
But he's, as you say, he's learning a job. He's getting hard done by. And hindsight's a wonderful thing, but I don't think you overly need to hindsight to say that in January, in the last weeks and the last days of the window, that if your option is Arthur or Welsh, you're taking Welsh.
But that sorry to jump in again there, but that's Dane Murray is in a nutshell all the issues that I've got with your like youth development. Like Dane Murray came in Postecoglou's first season because it was a needs must at the time, in the qualifiers, and that was what 5 years ago now. And what's he had a handful of games for Celtic and a few games for Queen's Park in that time, and then we're throwing him at Ibrox. Surely there should have been more game time or more loans in there if we think that he is going to be the kind of the next big thing or the next one to break through or whatever. And that's the issue that I've got with youth development. I'd call it a strategy, but I don't think there is a strategy. The only time we see youth players getting a chance, depending if they're good enough or no good enough or whatever, is when it's absolutely bare bones, needs must stuff, and they just get flung in. There isn't any thought behind it. It's just, we need a centre half, you're a centre half, get in the team. You've no kicked a ball for however long. And as I say, look, he made his Celtic debut against, was it Midtjylland we played in the qualifiers that year? Coming out of COVID, with Postecoglou, they've been his first games in 2021. And as I say, that's now 5 years ago, and he's probably got in total less than 30 games under his belt in 5 years. So, there's just a lack of planning.
Good point down there about the injuries that Dane Murray's had. Aye.
Yeah, but again, falls into the same bracket as Stephen Welsh. James, your issue is the same issue that I've got with Celtic and youth development. Gavin's heard me rattle on about this for decades as well. But that feels like a question you might want to ask somebody who may be a pathway manager, who is also a coach. And yeah, no offense to Sean Maloney, he's doing the best that he can in the position that he's in just now. But it feels like that might be just a title of a position that's actually not really doing jack shit. But then if Sean Maloney's not doing much, maybe we should ask the former pathway manager, Darren O'Dea, and find out what he thinks about bringing players through. Oh, wait, he did a podcast recently where he basically says that he had no fucking chance of doing anything in that job because the guys above would just fucking tell him to fuck off. I'm putting words into his mouth, but in essence, that's pretty much how I felt that interview went, was I had no fucking say in it.
Yeah. I think Darren O'Dea was a bit like me when I've had too much red wine. You know, he was just saying a wee bit too much. You know,
yeah.
Watch it, Darren. Watch it, Darren. Aye, but a few home truths for Darren O'Dea, and he kept on saying, "I probably shouldn't say this, but you know."
And we're all going, go on.
Aye. See, one kind of final comment about the game itself. James, I'm sure you'll have a response to this one. Cal McGregor, in his post-match comment, said that Rangers tried to make it a physical game, but we tried to make it into a football game. I don't think you took to that comment quite well. What was your thoughts on that?
Just shut up. Be physical. We all want is to sign physical players, and it's not as if we're playing like fucking prime Brazil this season. And I know that people kind of lapped it up in the immediate aftermath, but if you take that comment in the context of the season, we've not played a lot of football, nor have we been physical. So we drew the game. It was 2 each. They bullied us out of the park in the first half because we couldn't stand up to their physicality. They went back about 20 yards in the second half. God knows why. That's on their manager. Then we started playing football. And to be honest, you're coming out of the game, when you look at the stats, we probably deserved a victory with the XG McGinty. But aye, just keep your mouth shut. We're still sitting third in the table. I get we've got a game in hand. It was a 2-2 draw. Just let's not get ideas above our station now. I just didn't like that. I get what he was trying to do, but it was just when he said we tried to play football, and I'm like, well, can we try and play football for 90 minutes then, consistently? And as I say, I get that people in the immediate aftermath would maybe lap it up, but no for me.
I see your point. I do. By the way, on this day, very brief, 3rd of March 1962, a certain Lisbon Lion made his debut for Celtic. Came on and it was a 2-1 win for Celtic at Parkhead against Dundee. Anyone can think of which Lisbon Lion? 1962, I think he was maybe 18, 19 years old.
Tommy Gemmell.
Not Tommy Gemmell, but I understand why you went for him. Bobby Lennox. And as a child, when I watched back the Lisbon Lion footage and all the games that they played, I would have said that as a child he was my kind of favourite hero from the Lisbon Lions. So there we go, Bobby Lennox in 1962 making his debut for Celtic. Guys, a couple of other talking points. Berthel Askew was at the game again. I think McGinty noticed that he left early, which is terrible behaviour.
Fucking Rubble and Chase were just getting into a right good fight or something. What they called McGinty, the Paw Patrol characters?
Rubble, Chase, Sky, Zuma. Yeah.
There you go.
Rocky. Not Rocky.
So I failed to see the comparison between them and the Motherwell manager. Have I missed a joke here? Am I being slow?
Well, McGinty watched Paw Patrol instead of the second half, didn't he? So
aye.
Yeah. Of course. Right, McGinty, I'll get your take on this. The Motherwell manager. Do you want him to be the Celtic gaffer next season?
No. Short answer, no. And I don't mean that disrespectfully to him. He's doing a great job at Motherwell just now. I've actually been eyeing up the table tonight and looking at the form table. Motherwell's form is the best form in the whole league just now in the last 5-10 games. He's doing a really good fucking job. Defensively, obviously, only conceded 18 goals. The best defence in the league. One of the best defences in top league football across Europe, I think, if not the best. I think was one of the talks at the weekend. He is doing a great job.
Mm-hmm.
But his first, what was it? His first 20 games, 22 games up until he played us under the Nancy era. I think he'd won 7 games out of those 22. So the first half of the season, steady eddies, lots of draws, nothing spectacular. Second half, they're coming on to a good game, and he's doing pretty well. So, yes, take note. Yes, one to keep an eye on. But his history before Motherwell, he won the league in the Faroe Islands, and he'd done pretty shit in his other 2 jobs in Scandinavia. I can't remember exactly where it was. His win rate is below 50, and everywhere apart from, I think, the Faroe League. I think his win rate at Motherwell's around about 50% just now. I'm not taking him at Celtic when we desperately need a steady head, safe hands, experience, not just a safe hands, but we need somebody who's going to be taking the club and knows what he's actually going to do and has the experience to actually do it. And I totally
to fight the battles against the board as well.
Well, that too as well would be great, but I'll take my wins when I can get them. So initially, just a manager who knows how to come in and command a dressing room and get the best out of the players that he's got. Because I don't know if this guy can do that or not, because we just haven't seen it beyond his short but impressive enough time at Motherwell. I'd like to see him do it again next season, and then we would look at him. But perhaps he does it again next season with Motherwell. Perhaps he does okay in Europe, and perhaps a Crystal Palace takes a shot at him after next season. I'm okay risking that chance of losing him to a better league and he goes out of our reach than risk next season being a season where we start bad and we're playing chase and catch up. I'd rather not risk it. I'd rather bring in somebody who's won multiple leagues in different countries, who's got a bit of a presence about him to command the dressing room and a bit of experience to win games, and can start next season positive without any risk. He's just too much of a risk. As great as he's doing and all the plaudits he definitely deserves, he's too much of a risk at the early part of his career.
By the way, the goals conceded record is ridiculous. They've played 28 games and conceded 18. That was like Celtic's defensive record under Ange's second season, I think, with Cam Carter-Vickers and Starfelt. It was 18 goals conceded is ridiculous. The closest team to that is Hearts, who've conceded 24. But that is a fantastic record there. James McGinty does make some good points. Apart from a number of qualities that you want a Celtic manager to embody, I guess one thing that you're looking at is consistency of a track record. He's been brilliant so far this season for Motherwell. They've got no right to be where they are right now, but he's doing that. Where are you at?
I've got a lot of similar thoughts to McGinty. Maybe not as harsh, but the thing that he has only won in the Faroe Islands, and I get that he's got them playing some fantastic stuff and all the rest of it, but really he's taken a mid-table team up 3-4 positions. I think that Celtic and Rangers being as poor as we've been this season maybe emphasises his kind of rise this season. But the flip side of it is, to add to that as well, I know it's maybe not a fair comparison in terms of styles, but like Jimmy Thielen was hot shit last year, won the Scottish Cup. Nobody's getting near him with a barge pole. You could probably go back to Tony Mowbray. I know Tony Mowbray went to West Brom, but Tony Mowbray had Hibs playing some good stuff. Obviously, comes here, and we know how that ended. They've got a 50% win rate this season. They have had obviously a fair few draws, but they've also only lost 3 games. And like you say, the amount of goals they've conceded, if you look at them losing 3 games this season, you would think they're running away with the league. That's genuinely right up there. It's just the draws maybe that's killed them a wee bit. Well, I say killed them. They're having a great season, but you take my point. So don't get me wrong. If it came down to it and the choice was like Martinez, Robbie Keane and Jens Bertha-Rasku, I probably would be inclined more to go with him. The Martinez thing just doesn't excite me at all. I just think it's all a bit boring, to be honest. I would have serious question marks about that appointment.
I don't think that's an evolution from Brendan Rodgers going for Roberto Martinez.
Aye, Robbie Keane, I've got money on, so I'd be happy enough. But no, in terms of obviously what we'd see, Robbie Keane's pretty much an unknown quality. I don't even know where Ferencváros are in their league, if they're winning it or no. So, but in terms of Askew, I get all the points that we know that he can do it in this league, and he's got guys like Stephen Welsh, Stephen O'Donnell, Paul McGinn, and he's got them playing out their skin, playing some great stuff. So imagine what he could do with better players, and they are all perfectly fair points, but I also think of the context of what Celtic is going to look like in the summer, and there's going to be major changes, which is a good thing. There'll be an overhaul of certainly the squad. We need to have a transfer window like we did when Ange came in, where it's a total revamp of the team and you need these guys to come in and hit the ground running right away. Does he have the contacts to do that? Because we certainly don't have the scouting to do it. So that there is all that kind of thing, and that's no fair to hold against the Motherwell manager because it's got nothing to do with him. But I think that's where, I mean, you all know who I want anyway. I've said it often enough, but he's not even getting a mention. But when I look at the names that are legitimately kind of rumoured, I really don't know. I think maybe going with this guy is maybe a wee bit kind of exciting, essentially. Because as I say, I would definitely take him over Martinez and Keane, and they seem to be the kind of the two main candidates that are getting spoken about for what I've seen anyway.
See, if you had the gun to your head and you were focusing on domestic managers, who would you take? A Motherwell manager or John McGlynn?
Mate, that's a very good point. I know. Well, I'd take the Motherwell manager, but that's just an age thing. But it's actually something that I was saying as well. John McGlynn has got Falkirk playing some great stuff, and he's taken them up through the division. So a lot of the stuff that you're levelling at the Motherwell manager, you could probably throw at John McGlynn as well. He's done a fantastic job, but nobody would entertain the thought of him becoming a Celtic manager. And the fact that Motherwell have got put out both cups as well is a bit of a red flag for me too. When they've not got Europe, and like we seen it with Jimmy Thillen last year as well. Aberdeen were winning the league up until Christmas and all the rest of it, and then obviously fell away drastically. But he still went on to win them a cup. Whereas the Motherwell manager this year, like they still might win the league, but obviously it's kind of slim chances of that. But I mean, if they finish fourth, it's a great season and they've played fantastic. But what have they done? Moved up maybe 3-4 positions in the league for where you would normally kind of expect them to be, albeit they've played some really nice football. So, there's pros and cons for it.
I never knew that John Collins was sitting next to Askew. However, if Askew is going to be the next Celtic manager, I just don't think they'd be fraternising with his new employers whenever he's going through the business end of the season.
Was that at the weekend there as well, that John Collins was?
I'd imagine so.
Because I'm sure I've seen that picture before the weekend. So maybe it's been at another game where Askew and Collins have been sat together. There must be something linking the two of them outside of what we see, sort of thing. And I can't imagine that we're, as a club, we would be that blasé about basically tapping him up during the season to the degree that he's out hanging about with John Collins as part of a new and improved, yet the same old fucking coaching squad.
Well, there is also the fact that we play them next week.
Was that not? You'd expect that that's what he's there for. But no, the more I keep thinking about it, it's too early in his career and it's far too risky. People weren't happy with Ronnie Dyler coming in. People still aren't happy that Ronnie Dyler was our manager, and yet Ronnie Dyler had a better CV on him when he took over Celtic than what Askew's got just now. And I'm fully with James. He's taken Motherwell from what would have been 8th, 7th, 6th, and taken them to 4th, which is, again, he's having a great second half of the season. I'm not going to take anything away from him. But if we went to Norway and picked whatever club sitting in 3rd or 4th and says we want their manager, that's the par that we're on just now. Or going to Sweden and say, right, who's sitting 5th in the league? Let's give us your manager. We just wouldn't. I'm with James. We wouldn't entertain it. I want to be going signing a manager who's just won 2 league titles in Sweden, not the guy who's sitting mid-table, which is what Askew is. And I mean that with as little disrespect as possible. He's just not ready, and I'm willing to take the risk that we miss him for the sake of we actually sign somebody who is a winner, ready to go.
We need to get it right. We need to get everything right in the summer.
We need to get it right. Askew's a risk that it might not be right.
Ideal world scenario, who are you to picking?
Of the names listed, of the names just now that have been like Martinez and all the rest of it, Robbie Keane.
Robbie Keane's got the right trajectory.
He's a year older than Askew. He's won leagues I know people don't like saying this word. He's won a league in Israel. He's won the league in Hungary at clubs who I hate that we are basically calling ourselves on the same level, but clubs that are probably a similar size, stature in Europe. We should be bigger than Ferencváros. We should be bigger than Maccabi. But that's probably where our level is, and he's winning leagues in these places, and he's playing decent football, and he's getting good win percentages and records. Of all the names, he's the one that I would go for. But I would still like somebody a bit more overall experience. Shall we say maybe 10 years longer in the game? But who would that be that would willingly come to Celtic and deal with our shite?
Can I ask, do any of you guys have any suspicion about like continental managers, or is there an attraction towards British, Irish, Scandinavian? Like if I'm talking about like a French, a Spaniard, a Portuguese.
Oh, bringing me an Argentinian manager and all day long, I'll be fucking.
Well, to be fair,
with
the
an
last
interpreter.
the last time we were linked with like that, was it before Rodgers came in? It was his
Maresca?
name's just went right in my head. No, the Bournemouth manager, Areola.
See, the last time before Rodgers came in, that's the one I wanted. That's the level that we should be going out. If you're going to pick a mid-table manager sort of thing, that's the sort that you go and you headhunt and you bring in as a development progressive squad club. But we're not there. But Areola, he was the one I wanted last time.
The other one as well that got mentioned the last time, who I hadn't heard it at the time, but it was that guy, is it Farioli or something? I think he's the Porto manager now, but it was the one that went to Ajax and he kind of bottled, was it the league he bottled at the end, but they sacked him off the back yet, and he's got a move to Porto, and I think he's got him playing well. He was in Turkey when we were linked to him, and I think he'd done really well in Turkey.
It's kind of the same with players, like it's just not my job to see if you're playing Football Manager, you've got a database there, then you can do these enhanced criteria searches. But I'm just going from the names that I hear in the media, and if
I'll do it. I know one that'd be perfect for us, so don't you worry about it.
Is his name ending? Is it similar to a flower? Yes,
it is indeed. Yes, Big Johnny Daffodil.
Right. I guess one wee final question. I hope it's not anticlimactic, but it was just about the impact that our fullbacks have had this season, and it's the players who are not full-time Celtic players, Araujo and Sirachi. Do either of you envisage either of those players playing with Celtic next season? I'll just say my piece before you guys have come in. I think Boca Juniors may have signed Sirachi for about €8 million at one point or another. I just feel, I don't know if he's got a family or whatever, the fact that he's playing on the other side of the world, I think he would really have enjoyed this experience, whether we win the league or not. I think he'll take a lot from it, but I would be surprised if he saw his future at Celtic. Probably more so hampered by the fact that we've got Kieran Tierney playing there. Sirachi would command half-decent wages, and there would have to be a good outlay. I'd imagine 5 million plus for Sirachi, and I just don't know if it'd be great to have him. I would love to have him on board, but I just think from a practical point of view, I don't think that the Celtic board would finance that outlay for a player like him. And with Araujo as well, I would take Araujo over a fit Alistair Johnson. I think Alistair Johnson is the athlete, but Araujo is the footballer. I also love the personality that Araujo's got. I think he's been the shining light since the start of this year, since the new year. I can't see him playing as well for Celtic next season. It would cost a lot of money, high wages as well. I can't see it. And again, he's an American, he's a Hispanic, and he might try and take another crack at it in England. If not, I think he could go to the continent. He can speak Spanish, obviously, so he can go back to Spain or whatever. A former Barcelona player. I just can't see it happening. But I love Araujo, love him to bits. Either of you guys want to take a shot at that one?
I would sign both of them. And I get that what I'm about to say is not going to realistically happen. But if you've got Chiuntini and Srirachi as your left back options, and you've got Alistair Johnson and Arahu as your right back options, that's the sort of depth that you truly want at Celtic. Now, I get that we can't have 22 players at that quality, at that level throughout the entire squad, starting 11 and a backup 11 sort of thing. But if you could get one of those two whilst keeping Alistair Johnson and Chiuntini, so you've got 3 fullbacks, plus, let's say, Srirachi you keep, and you've got Donovan as the next project, the next development youth player, get Ralston out the window. Then again, 3 plus Donovan is still healthy, and that still gives you a good balance of quality and depth, people that can come on. I think before Srirachi took his injury as well, between him and KT, they were getting reasonably fair game time, and I think you can give a fair amount of game time to players of that calibre throughout the course of the season without one of them feeling like they're not getting a look in. You're talking 60-odd games a season. There's minutes to be played for these kind of players, but yeah, I don't think we're going to sign both. The only way we do sign both for me is that you might see Alistair Johnston moving on if he has a good World Cup. He's been here for a few years. He is somebody who has got monetary value to his name, and if he was to go, which I don't want him to, then Araho, I can't say words.
Come on, you're the Mexican here tonight. You should get it.
Julian. He's a person that you would it would make absolute sense to sign him if Alistair Johnston's about to go at the door. The same way that Josip was about to go at the door, so you signed AJ. It's a no-brainer to do that one, assuming that we are allowed to sign him from Bournemouth. As far as wages for the both of them, I don't think they would command excessive wages. Another player that was obviously been linked this season is Robertson. He would command serious wages, and I don't see the club outlaying the better part of 100 grand between the 2 left backs options in KT and Robertson. Srirachi would be less. He would be more like the 20-25. And I think you could maybe get away with justifying that kind of level. So yeah, I would sign both in an ideal world, but realistically not going to happen. So at least getting one of them would be great to have that overall depth and quality. But we need to see that throughout the rest of the squad as well.
Yeah. James, I guess McGinty probably summed it up well. Unless you've got any...
I don't think we'll get Araujo. I think there's more chances getting Srirachi. I think if Araujo's probably played well enough to go to the World Cup, and if he goes and has a good World Cup, like you say, I think he'll get another chance in England or go overseas. Srirachi, I get what you're saying about him having a family and stuff, but I think he was playing in Spain prior to going to Boca, and he was only there for a year or two at most. He's obviously had spells in Germany and stuff, so I think Kobe Donovan being there, they'll see that as cover for Alistair Johnston, and Kieran Tierney doesn't have cover, so it would make sense for us to get Srirachi.
Yeah. Right, okay, guys. Before we finish up for tonight, obviously we've got a massive game tomorrow. This is going to be the game in hand, which should have been played a couple of weeks back, but it was postponed because of bad weather. So we're away to Pitoji tomorrow night, 8 o'clock kickoff. Now, I've been told that this is one of the worst Aberdeen times in recent memory. I'm just going to refresh my mind and have a look at the league table here. Aberdeen are 8th. They have got 29 points, and they're only ahead of Dundee, St Mirren, Kilmarnock and Livingston. And their recent form in the last 6 in the last 6 games, they've had 1 win, 4 defeats and 1 draw. They've won 8, they've drawn 5, and they've lost 15. And thankfully, they've got a very high goal deficit. They've conceded 39 goals this season, which is pretty fucking high. Right, so what's your lineup for the game tomorrow night? Who are we going with? Let's do this unanimously. Are we going for Casper? Or are we going with Sinisalo? And then who do we think Martin O'Neill will go with?
I think it'll be Sinisalo.
Sinisalo. McGinty, I can see you being on Team Sinisalo, yes?
I 100% would go with him, but I just fear. I fear that if there's been a legitimate excuse from not being in the team, shoulder injury, not well or whatever, then he'll be back at the first opportunity. But if it's been a case of dropping him for form and lack of performances, then Sinisalo would probably stay in. I would pick Sinisalo.
Do you believe that he's not well? Do you not think that's all quite convenient?
Well,
I think it is, but I think it's part. I mean, a lot of people have been saying he's done his shoulder, his hip, or whatever it is, and that's part of the reason for his poor performance.
Martin O'Neill already says today that Casper is out, so let's put that one to bed. So Ross Doohan on the bench and Sinisalo in goal. Right, so I think we'd all agree that Araujo as right back. You're going to have Scales in there, and I would imagine that Dane Murray is going to get the shot again. I think Dane Murray is going to partner Scales. I can't see us bringing in Arthur for this one, unless either of you strongly disagree. So that would leave left back position. Scales.
I personally would bring in Arthur, but I don't think he will.
I would like to see him, but no, I think he'll persist with Dane Murray. Again, what I was trying to go say with Casper kind of thing, if there's a reason for him not being in, like a legitimate reason, then he's not in. If not, then yeah, we're kind of sugarcoating things a wee bit. There's no reason to, there's no physical reason, injury-wise, to drop Dane Murray. I don't see him dropping him for the complete inexperience of Arthur.
Okay, well that brings us on to midfield. So obviously Cam McGregor is going to play. Nygren will probably play. Who plays? So does Hatate get a shot? Does he get the reprieve?
Hatate's jersey.
Yeah, Hatate.
Yeah. Who did we pick for left back? KT?
Well, it's either Kieran Tierney or Sriracha. Kieran Tierney started the game. Sriracha came on near the end. Who would you go for?
6.5, doesn't it?
I agree.
It kind of wouldn't be a bad idea in an ideal world if, again, you had two perfect left backs. One starts the game, gets 60 minutes, the other one comes on for the last half hour, and then that one starts the next game and just rotate them in and out. It would be kind of ideal.
Okay, so we think that Hatate might get the nod for the midfield. Chamberlain back on the bench. So up front, that's anybody's game.
Names out of hat.
Yeah.
Maeda. For me, it's Maeda.
Where?
Up front, through the middle.
Right. Okay.
Taneki, Maeda, Yang. That's my front three, and it's not because it's great. It's because it's the best of the shite situation.
By the way, see if we lined up like that, I'd be hoping it might turns in a performance. But on paper that's good. But it's just
he's not a striker. He's still not a striker.
None of them are. James.
He's barely resembled a left winger this season either, to be fair. But he's not a striker. I think he'll bring in Shvan Chara again.
Who would you go for, James?
I could be Yang, Shvan Chara. Taneki deserves a start, but Maeda always seems to start, so I'll go Maeda, Shvan Chara, and Yang.
Can I ask, why is Yang consistently getting games?
Because it's only him or Forrest that can play that side.
Why is any of them getting a game? Pretty much, they're the only fucking options.
Yeah. Yang, the last goal was against the Huns at Parkhead, if I'm right. And since then, he's just been vanilla. But
if we bring in Vuk out of cold storage.
Jesus God, man.
But this is the thing, though. This is a guy. Oh fuck! I don't want to go back to January, but this is a guy that was brought in to be the man to play right wing. It was going to drag us towards the league. This is what the board were thinking, and then
We were going to buy him for money.
Yeah.
exactly.
Thank fuck he is injured. So what is it? Left wing, Balikwisha, up front, Johnny Kenny, right wing, Booker. We'll go with that.
By the way, Johnny Kenny scored for Bolton at the weekend. So
Oh fuck, he's actually out this. I forgot he actually got loaned out.
He's still our highest scoring striker this season, isn't he?
No, Maida, if you want to class him as a
I
striker.
think he's not a striker.
Yeah. Well, Tierney's got 4 goals now, and he's got 7 assists.
Can I just say, by the way, I know we're still going to round off the thing. Top goal scorers in the league, obviously, Maswinisi with 16 and Nigrian with 14, then it's Braga with 12. We are 29 games into this season. There's only 9 more games to go. Like, we are 3/4 of the way through. That means if you divide 16, maths is not my strong point, but you divide 16 by 4, that means on average, Maswinisi might get 20 and Nigrian might get about 18 goals. For the league top goal scorers, that's not pretty fucking poor.
It's because Celtic and Rangers have been rotten.
Like, there's a chance that the top league goal scorer won't break 20 goals. And actually, the 2 top goal scorers is a right wing and a fucking central midfielder. And even Braga at third, he's not an out-and-out striker, is he not?
Top of that. Yeah, well, he's like a second striker, isn't he, Braga? Would you guys be happy with Braga signing for Celtic next season? I don't think Hearts would sell to us, but would you guys be happy with Braga in a hoop shot next season?
I've honestly not seen enough to say yes to that. What I would say is that we need to be careful that we don't end up signing 5 or 6 SPFL quality players. I mean, is Braga, Spankara, and Maswinisi as your front line, is that going to be any better?
I think all you need is Claudio Braga. Okay.
Oh dear.
Okay. I was just seeing if you're going for that, McGinty.
No.
Anyway. In terms of projections between now and the end of the season, you need to take into account that we have been dug meat against some of the worst teams in the league, and come the split, we're going to be playing against the higher performing teams in the league. So we're going to rack up more goals conceded, and it's going to be harder for us to actually score goals. So, take it one game at a time. Predictions for tomorrow night? 2-1.
I would love a fucking 8-0, 9-1 scoreline like we've seen before against Aberdeen. But yeah, it's going to be like a 2-1, 3-2, late goal winner, some shite. The corner's not being turned.
Can I ask you one other thing? See, out of the long-term absentees, Jota, Cameron Carter-Vickers, or AJ, if you could have had one of them performing for Celtic since the start of the season, who would have made the biggest impact in terms of performance results?
Jota.
If you could have had one of them back?
Jota, game changer. Absolute game changer. Our front line's been shocking all season. Flashes of Tanecki at times, but Jota would perform every game. He'd bring excitement to the team. He would lift the squad, and he would literally bring an end product.
I think I would have waited for Jota as well. James?
Aye, full house for Jota. Just even what McGinty says is spot on, but even when you compare it to the draft path, Scales and Trusty is no great, but you'll get by. Araujo, McGinty's just said he thinks is better than Johnson. Joel and Vuka, Jota. I mean, that's a
yeah. Aye. Right. Anyway, gents. By the way, it's the semi-final between Barca and Atletico. I think Atletico, they were. It's 4-1 on aggregate to Diego Simone's Atletico.
They're not pulling that one back.
No. Wolves and Liverpool.
No.
Anyway, right, gents, it's been a pleasure. So hopefully we'll be back next Tuesday, and by that point we'll have spoken about the Celtic and Aberdeen game, and also another Glasgow derby game. So it's thick and fast. But it's been a pleasure. Thanks again, and to the viewers, thanks again for sticking with us. And hope tomorrow night is enjoyable. Right, see you later.
Yeah.